This is Dr. David Allen, and we're having a very serious conversation with Dr. Tameka Johnson-Dame. She's one of our newly qualified psychiatrists. As you see, she's a very good one. We look forward to working intensely with her. Dr. Johnson-Dames, medical marijuana. I mean, I met a bishop in Canada who says he's having osteoarthritis. And he said, you know, the only thing that works is marijuana. Makes him feel better, helps him to walk. What do we do about medical marijuana, doctor?
So there's been a lot of research on medical marijuana and its effects. And yes, there are positive effects of medical marijuana in managing certain illnesses. There are persons that have, like you mentioned, the pain from osteoarthritis that have found that it's been very helpful. Persons that are on certain medications that are suffering with extreme nausea and decrease in appetite that have used medical marijuana had positive effects. There have been even persons with seizure disorders like epilepsy. They've done studies to find that there are some positive benefits to using medical marijuana. And the list goes on and on. In a case like that, no one is taking away from the positive effects of plants and what plants can be and how plants can be used to affect these various medical conditions. Right now, there are medications that we use now for other illnesses, and we would have used plants as the root source of, of treatment for the patient. But I think in a case like that, definitely the market has been regulated. There have been trials that have been done to see how effective it is. If there are side effects, if the side effects are worth using the treatment in these illnesses. And there have also been studies that have compared what kind of drug should we use. So right now, when we talk about recreational cannabis, where persons may use edibles or may smoke, a lot of the medical marijuana that we've seen or that I've read about in studies would have been pills that would have been formulated, where you can extract that cannabidiol. And that's the part that's been really, really heavily researched when it comes to using cannabis, the plant, to treat these medical conditions. When we talk about recreational marijuana, we're talking about a high concentration of THC. And THC is the proportion of the cannabis plant that causes that high, or the psychotic symptoms that we were talking about earlier in the show. So medical marijuana definitely has its benefits, and I'm not going to knock that for sure.
How should we deal with that? Should that be legalized immediately?
So I think if we have studied and we've determined that this is what we need to get this thing off the ground, this is how we plan to bring this medication in. As a start, they've done clinical trials elsewhere in the world to see how it affects certain populations. And I think that the same could be done here. I think that would be something that would be worthwhile to see how does it affect our population. Are people really seeing the benefits? Or is it just something that we're going to jump on a bandwagon because we've seen it done somewhere else?
So Tameka, with your study on cannabis, would you or would you not back the legalization of medical marijuana?
Because I did not study medical marijuana and its effects, it would be hard for me to say that my opinion is based on the study. So apart from my study, I would say that I would give medical marijuana a try.
You'd back the legalization of medical
marijuana.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it seems to me that's a valid argument, and
Yeah.
it should be tried.
Yeah.
Many people find it very, very helpful.
Yes.
What about the mixture of marijuana and alcohol? Are you concerned about that? Because apparently they take a drink of alcohol and smoke a joint. In your work, is this a problem or not?
It's definitely something that we see where we call persons polysubstance users. They use cigarettes, they would tell you they use cannabis, they use alcohol, sometimes all at the same time. Sometimes they substitute one for the next. So I couldn't get any weed today, so I use black and mild doc, or I couldn't get any alcohol, so I smoke a joint. So a lot of times persons use them as substitute drugs or they use them in combination. So it's definitely a problem because, of course, anything that you put into your body that's going to alter the way your brain works or functions can pose a significant risk for you and for those around you. So definitely something we see, and definitely something that's problematic.
What about some people argue when they have a joint, they get heightened sensitivity. Some of the time they can listen to music much better. It's much more exciting. They can dance more freely. They can just chill out. Is that okay? I mean, that's nice, eh?
A lot of people argue that I've heard the argument that, doc, I could smoke weed and I am fine and I'm calm, but when I drink alcohol, I'm loud and I'm wild and I'm aggressive and I'm agitated. So while that may be the case for some persons, it's definitely not the case for everybody, which brings us back to my original point. Let's look at the fact that things change. Things change among people. Things change in certain circumstances. So there may have been a time back in the day where you would smoke a joint, you get high, you lay down and go to sleep. But then what happens if you become psychotic and you try to violently attack someone? Because it has happened. It has happened where that use of cannabis was the one trigger that now led you into what would have been in your genes to develop a chronic illness like schizophrenia.
It's true. You know, alcohol used to be a major issue years ago. How is alcohol doing these days compared to cannabis and cocaine?
So we do have a significant drug problem. As you know, we do have a substance abuse program there at Sandilands Rehabilitation Center. And of course, we would always vouch for more space, more facilities, because even that program is limited. It's limited, and the admissions to the program are also voluntary admissions. So that subgroup of persons that has the willpower to change, that wants to change, that recognizes that they have a problem. But we see all of those drugs, and as I mentioned, persons that use cannabis, a lot of them also use alcohol. Persons that use alcohol, a lot of them use nicotine. So it's a wide mixture of substance use disorders. Cocaine even. When I first started working at Sandilands back in 2016, I would tell you that I was blown away because I had no idea. I was not in that world or in that life to know that we had such a wide population of persons that use cocaine. I know persons that use marijuana. I know persons that drink alcohol because, you know, alcohol is more socially
Doctor, you've
acceptable.
been in the church a long time, you know.
So I really, Dr. Allen, I had no idea. And then, you know, I would see Father
I
like,
Church of Prophecy got you, sister.
I'm like, cocaine, wow, we were using cocaine, and that, you know, it's a thing. And, you know, when we think about addiction, addiction is a brain disease. So it is not as simple as, okay, I take this drug, I'm using cocaine, I'm using marijuana, I'm using alcohol. Oh, I feel like stopping now, I'm just gonna stop. It is not that easy. Once your brain gets rewired, those chemicals, they now signal to your body that you need this substance. It is very, very difficult to stop once you develop an addiction. And we know addiction happens with not just drugs, but with gambling, with all sorts of other things. So this addiction is now an illness. It is an illness that for a lot of persons, you need serious professional help, which is why we'll make this pitch again, that we need the resources. We need a little bit more money pumped into mental health.
Very good point. You can't talk about more legalization when you have heavy gambling, when you have marijuana use, of cocaine use. You don't have the resources, your population is going to be destroyed.
Yeah, and in the States, they have resources, you know.
We're not the States right now, right?
We're not.
But that's a very valid point you're raising. More legalization of drugs means you have to have the proper resources, because nothing is worse than seeing a young person, a young male, in a psychotic situation. his whole life is thrown through. His job is gone. His education is wasted. And his parents are they're pulling your hair out.
Right.
And it just doesn't stop, right, doctor? It's hard.
It's very
I've seen mothers
difficult.
just sit and cry and, so.
Yeah. And what do you tell them when they ask, is my child going to recover? I don't know. I can tell you what the prognosis is. I can tell you in certain cases, well, this prognosis looks like it could be good. And then in other cases, I'm like, this prognosis looks pretty poor. It's very sad to see persons with so much potential and it just goes down the drain almost.
And doctor, when I heard you from the Church of Highway, Church of Prophecy,
Highway Church of
one
God.
thing about people from your denomination, they live what they call true living or clean living. They emphasize that, right? Is that something we should be doing more with our people? Because our young men are using alcohol, using marijuana and cocaine. And I sometimes I get I know it very well. I led the drug war here for many years. But do we need a kind of almost public health, clean living program again? Which your church, I think, has done.
Right. So what I think would be most helpful, and this is me not only speaking from a church perspective, but from what I found in
You're still in the
research.
church, or you said goodbye to that now?
No, I haven't said goodbye to that. Still in the church. So what I think is, when we talk about society at large, you can't impose your religious views on everybody because that just won't work. That makes people even more...
Yeah, but you all seem to know how to live well. Look at you. I met you. I met you about 6 years ago. I was doing an evaluation of the program.
Yes.
When you walked into the room, I told my colleague, yeah, that's the leader. And then when I met you last week, oh, I met you years ago. And so you all have something that just projects people. Good, clean, healthy living. And can you not maximize that for healthcare these days?
You can try. You can try. The problem is, people don't like being told what to do, Dr. Allen.
Yeah, but it benefited you. You seem like you just... One lady from the church said, Doc, I believe in rule keeping. I said, where you been? She said, and she's a student. Doc, I believe in rule keeping. Just keep the rules. It's easy.
Yeah.
And you strike me that this is a right way to do it. Do it the right way, no problem. Do it the wrong way, and you got a hell of a problem. Problems upon problems upon problems.
Setting a good foundation, like I said. You set a good foundation for your children, and you just let them be. I don't feel as though my parents had such a tight grasp on me where I could not do anything, I could not explore, I couldn't make my own decisions, but they set an awesome foundation. So once you set a good foundation for your children... But you seem free and
still full of life and spirit.
I am.
So what foundation they set did not sort of block your freedom?
It didn't. But
what did they do?
They allowed me to explore life, but still tell me, this is what can happen in these situations. You see that person over there? This is how that story went. This is how that happened for them. I've been through this in my life, and this is what I've learned. So in your life, as you go about your life, you're free to make your own decision, but you don't have to make the same mistakes that I made growing up to know what you should and should not do. And as you teach your children, as your children watch you live, they will grow to understand how they should go about their lives. Not that it happens for everybody. It surely happens for me, thank God.
You make living right so attractive and so beautiful.
Thank you.
So you what they call a practicing Christian as well?
I try to be.
Wow. And would that be helpful in helping us to negotiate this whole addiction maze of marijuana, alcohol? Does it help to have a faith?
So I think so. And it's interesting that you brought up that point, because that's something else that we notice in mental health. We see persons come in with these illnesses, and sometimes they come in even with...
I mean, you have a radiance in your face. Is that the Holy Spirit? I mean, you do, doctor. I mean, I'm just being honest here. I've been around a long time, 54 years in the field.
You want to know if it's
all
the
over the
Holy
world,
Spirit?
Africa,
I
South
would hope
America,
so.
North America, England, and you have a radiance. And when I heard you were from Church of God Highway, I just said, I just mentioned all the people I knew. You have a radiance.
Thank you.
You think that's due to your faith?
I think
And if
so.
it's so, how can we get that to happen more in our country?
So faith isn't something that you can enforce on people. But as you mentioned, you met me a few years ago, you met me again last week, we're talking now, and it's something that you can see, and it's something that you believe I project. And I think that is all it is, you know. You live your life the way you've been brought up to live your life, and people will see that and they will want to follow. A part
It wasn't a
of
little,
faith.
being Church of God, but a little strict for you, though, right? You couldn't do what all the other kids did.
I didn't feel like it was very strict
But it
or
was strict. I'm just
restrictive.
being honest with you. Some people would say that's pretty strict living, man.
I didn't feel so.
Really?
I didn't feel so.
You didn't feel cheated of the
I felt like I lived a very fruitful life.
Wow.
I felt like I enjoyed life to the fullest. I felt like I accomplished everything that I set out to accomplish. I don't feel like I missed out on anything.
Wow. Well, God bless your husband. He's going to have to fly right. Doctor, do you get discouraged sometime?
Not discouraged, but definitely saddened at the outlook for some persons. So you hear stories, you see cases, and you realize that it's been years and years and they've never returned to their former self. It's sad to see.
You know, when you told me about your research project, and you mentioned cocaine psychosis, and also marijuana psychosis, and seeing the young men, I saw your face drop. What was it like for you to see our young, beautiful men in our country with another thing knocking them out? How did that affect you?
Yeah, it's definitely disheartening, definitely. Because you know that this is probably a life with a lot of potential. Their family members had looked towards having a lot of potential come out of them, and then all of a sudden it's kind of stolen.
How did it make you feel?
Very sad, very sad. But it also pushes me to continue in the fight, to help. And that's why I chose psychiatry as a profession. It is one of the areas coming up in medical school and completing my medical degree was one of the areas that I was definitely interested in. And I found that being able to see the few cases that you can change, being able to help the persons that you can help. The show is called People Helping People. So me being able to help them in that way was definitely right up my alley.
Well, God bless you.
Thank
We're going to
you,
take
you
a
too.
break and be right back.